simultaneously for those who couldn't join, but welcome, welcome. If you could put in the chat the school where you are and the age of your child. We'd love to keep gather some data about families that are interested in learning more about the leadership year of Children's House if you're in Montessori schools. So please enter in the chat and we can get to know each other a little bit. Oh, we have a friend from Florida joining. Oh, this is so fun doing two time zones together. I love it. So enter, yes, the name of the school and then the age or ages of your children. And we'll kind of see what we've got for a community here that we're putting together in this moment. I will go ahead and share my screen. Oh, I've got some Ohio, Atlanta. Oh, this is so fun. Yep, Vickery, Georgia. Oh, look at how fun this is. I love it. We're all over. I love Endeavor schools. We have them all on so many places. Um, Over 100 schools coast to coast, about half are Montessori roughly. And so this is our Montessori community that's showing up here on this Zoom call. And I'm not surprised at all. Montessori parents are very curious. They're lifelong learners like we're developing our children to be. And so I'm so thrilled to pieces that you're all here. I'm going to share my screen. And you can go ahead and keep adding yourself in the chat, the name of your school and the age of your child or children. And I'm just going to get started because we have a lot to cover, and I'm hoping to have a few minutes at the end for any questions that pop up. And the question, so save the questions till the end because I won't be able to monitor the chat while we're going through. But at the end, I'd be happy to take questions either in the chat or just, do the little raise hand function, and we'll answer questions live. So we will. Yeah, so save the questions till the end, jot them down because I don't want to miss anyone's questions. But we are here to talk about why year three changes everything. The kindergarten year, we sometimes call it the leadership year, sometimes we call it the capstone year. And we're going to be talking in depth about that special, special time in a Montessori child's educational journey. So, my name is Jessica Ostrov. I'm the Regional Director of Montessori Education for Minnesota schools and San Diego. And so my counterparts, this is the word I was looking for, my counterparts are Jana Morgan Herman, and she's the academics director for East Coast, east side of the river. When I say the river, I mean the Mississippi. Those of us in Minnesota, that's what we refer to as the river, and Texas. And then Priya Rajagopalan is the regional director of Montessori Education for that other side, the West Coast, and into those states over Nevada, Colorado, those states over there. So I'm thrilled to represent all of us on the academic team and our fearless leader, Dr. Amy Brereton, who is their Chief Academics Officer. Yes, welcome. I wanted to welcome you all again. And in the introductions, please name your school and the age of your child or children in the chat. And thank you, first and foremost, thank you for trusting Endeavor Schools with your most precious, precious thing in your world, your child. And none of us take that responsibility lightly. We really, really appreciate the trust that you put in us, in our schools, and in the teachers. And I wanted to share these photos. So this is me with my son when he was graduating from Montessori kindergarten. So I was the teacher. I was one of the teachers. So there I am at the back. But they each had their very special I made little flower corsages for the boys and little head wreaths for the girls. And they got diplomas. And every school does things a little bit differently. But graduating from Montessori kindergarten is a really big deal. It's a massive accomplishment, and there he and I are together. That photo is actually a couple of years old at the Grand Canyon. He is now 18 years old and almost 19. He went to New Zealand right after high school graduation and got his ski certification, and now he's living at Beaver Creek in Colorado and working as a ski instructor for only one more month, and then he'll be home for the summer. But I tell you this because everything I'm about to tell you tonight, I know from firsthand experience because of this guy, because of Nico, my son, who went through Montessori, kindergarten, through all the way through the program, and actually he was able to go all the way through junior high too, which is a unique opportunity as well. But we know as Montessorians that 0 to 6, this is the most important time. I know in brain development and the foreshadowing of the type of adult that they're going to be and the things that they are learning now will affect their decisions and their lifestyle and the way they relate to others and their participation in community for the rest of their lives. No pressure. But this is a really important time. So I'm so grateful that you all have your children with us in a Montessori program in Endeavor Schools. And it's very tender to think about the age they are now, and you blink your eyes and suddenly they are adults. But I know for a fact that Nico's Montessori education contributes to his success in relationships, in living situations, in making decisions about money and travel, and being able to understand how to navigate the world around him. I see direct connections from those early years. And gosh, he was just so cute. I love using his photos in my presentations as well. So we'll keep going. Dr. Montessori talked about this. She talked about education as an aid to life. So we are raising children that others will want to live with someday, independent and interdependent. So that relates to what I was just speaking about a child being able to go into the world, be able to function and not just survive, but thrive. And then interdependent, how they relate to each other in their living situations. Nico lives with two guys that are about 5 years older than him and a guy that is about 1 year older than him working at the ski resort. And I don't mean to brag, but when we were on a vacation together, Nico and I, his roommates were texting him, Nico, when are you coming back? We need help. Our one roommate, he's always leaving dishes everywhere. He's burning the food and setting off the fire alarms. He is yelling at his video games until 2 o'clock in the morning, just not aware of the other people in this living situation. And I felt very proud that my child is the one sort of holding this gang together out there in Colorado. And so I say this because these are skills that come with the territory in Montessori. It is not just about reading, writing, and arithmetic, although it very much also is, and we're going to talk about that. But these are the life skills. It's education as an aid to life. And often we have parents that wonder, okay, should I give them more time in the children's house or move forward to a different educational system that goes, through elementary or high school, the kindergarten year? What should I do? Or if they have a summer birthday and they could do another year of children's house or move on to public kindergarten or private kindergarten somewhere else. I have never, in 26 years of education in Montessori education, I've never had a family regret giving their child more time in children's house. Pushing forward can have mixed results. Sometimes it's just fine, and sometimes the parents are really kicking themselves, wishing that they had just given their child a little more time to develop. Because this is a decision that impacts not just this one year. It's just a 9 month school year. That is very short. We can do anything for 9 months. Those of us that have had children know that, or that have grown children in our bodies know we can do anything for 9 months. 9 months is just 9 months, but it's a huge impact. And moving forward has those ramifications if they are constantly on the young end and people are, their physical bodies are developing faster. Their driver's licenses are coming sooner. There's a lot more responsibility and choices and social situations that would really benefit from having some extra maturity, some extra time to process and to grow. And it just keeps going. When they graduate from high school, are they on the very, very young end, or are they, have had a little bit more time to bake, so to speak, in the oven? Um, Educational professionals often send their children to Montessori school for as long as possible. It reminds me of technology folks that don't give their children screen time for a very long time because they know something that a lot of parents are learning kind of maybe the hard way, that less time with technology in the early years is going to help them in the long run. And it's with Montessori education, giving them this opportunity now will sustain them and nurture them. Um, will sustain them and nurture them for the future and give them it's like taking a shot of wheatgrass, right? That extra boost that is going to help them get through some challenges that life always throws our way. So, why do you think these educational professionals and child psychologists send their children to Montessori school for as long as possible? Let's explore. So we first want to ask, why are Montessori environments grouped by 3-year age increments? If you had children from 3 to 6 together, and then lower elementary is first through third, and upper elementary is four through 6, and so on and so forth. Why 3 years? Where does that come from? So this is a quote by Dr. Maria Montessori, of course, the founder of this method, who said, I have found that in his development, the child passes through certain phases, much like the life cycle of this butterfly here, each of which has its own particular needs. The characteristics of each are so different that the passages from one phase to the other has been described by certain psychologists as rebirths. That's by Dr. Maria Montessori in her Four Planes of Education, Part 1. And in 50 years of research and observation, the Montessori method emerged to meet those specific needs and characteristics of the what she called the first plane child. First plane is 0 to 6 years old, second plane is 6 to 12 years old, third plane is 12 to 18, and fourth plane is 18 to, let's say, 24, right? Our brain development does not end just when we graduate from high school. In fact, it goes on for a number of years more. So paying close attention to those different planes of development and what is needed for healthy and successful acquisition of skills during that time, this method was born from that research and observation. So maximizing the opportunity where joyful, effortless, self-chosen learning comes. And that is a huge key, the self-chosen. When a child is in a traditional or conventional setting, there is not a lot of choice offered. The children are at the best, they might be in small groups. But we know, especially in kindergarten, they're more often in one large group. And we know that children coming into kindergarten have all different kinds of experiences. Some children have never even been out of the home in a school setting at all, right? So then you've got Montessori children coming in they're more worldly. They understand the world a little bit more. They understand school. And so it's a very, very different playing field. But by first grade, the children have been through kindergarten. They understand how to work within the system of school, and that is when differentiation can happen a little bit more. Advanced reading groups or different types of grouping children together based on ability. But kindergarten really is a challenge to do that with, since you have such a broad variety of experiences that children are bringing with them. Whereas in Montessori, it is self-chosen and individual, and we'll talk a little bit more about what all that means. You see children working in a group down at the bottom there to build something together. You see fractions. A child having these types of materials to be able to understand fractions will set them up for massive success when they get to math in school. Second, third, fourth grade, when they're doing fractions, the child that has had experience with these materials has internalized what a fraction is and how to work with fractions. So that's just one small example. There's so many things. So Montessori primary program is designed as in response to nature to be 3 years. There are many metaphors. It's like baking bread. If you take out too early, it's not fully developed. And the third year is when everything really sets and comes together. Or like a plant, the first year the child is putting down roots, the second year growing up tall, the third year the flowers and the fruits come. Or it's allowing the bud to burst open to its fullest potential. Every child is a bud, right? And how are we going to nurture it so it can burst open and fulfill its full potential? We would talk about social emotional growth, right? The personal growth and development of a child. And then we'll talk about academics in a bit. But I want to start with this because this is the part that will impact their ability to function in society, to be successful with relationships, whether that is in college settings with professors, whether that is in workplaces or internships, or even in romantic relationships or roommate situations. These skills, these soft skills, are critical to success. And I honestly feel that the more practice in a safe place like Montessori classroom we can give to children about these, the more successful they will be with these in the future. So, mentoring others and their leadership skills, self-confidence, discovering their unique learning style. Every human has slightly different ways of learning, and there's so many options, and it's all customized in Montessori. So a child can really start to understand themselves as a learner and take that with them. Fostering a love of learning, another important thing that they will be taking with them. Promoting global citizenship. We look at going from the whole to the parts, the world down to the household that we're in. And we'll talk about geography in a little bit. Active, engaged learning, self-chosen. We talked about that. How important it is to be able to choose your own work. We all know that we are most successful when we have some say in what we're doing, whether it's at work or in school. Self-discipline, understanding that being part of a community doesn't mean that you get everything you want right when you want it, but you trust that it will be there when you need it and your turn will come. Intrinsic motivation. We don't have, pizza parties if everybody's good, or treats, or sticker charts, or rewards. We're developing something deeper, not a surface level motivation. This is from inside a child. They will know that they want to do XYZ because they've had experience that has proven to them that it is a positive thing to do something for yourself or for others. It's not to earn a reward. It's because the reward is in the accomplishment of doing said activity, right? So we'll talk more about that. Social and collaboration skills, independence, integrated knowledge. So Dr. Montessori recognized that a child from 0 to 6 has what she calls the absorbent mind. They're taking in everything just completely effortlessly. They're not memorizing with flashcards. They're not getting lectures. They are learning by doing, and it's becoming part of who they are. Just like those fractions that I showed you, a child will have an intrinsic understanding of what fractions are after having worked with those materials at this particular point in brain development. Waiting till to do it later doesn't mean that they won't be successful. It just won't come in that same fluid and effortless way. It will take a different type of brain that they have at that point to learn it. Just like learning a language, when I study and study and study languages, and it takes a lot of time and energy, but I taught in Japan for 2 years right after I got finished my Montessori training, and I had 23 students and 14 different nationalities. They were all 3 to 6 years old, and many of them came in without a word of English and were fluent by winter break. That's the absorbent mind at work. We can't force those sort of things to happen. That comes from within. That is a special power of the brain at that particular age. So Dr. Montessori recognized that and built this method to support and give the child as many opportunities to use it, that absorbent mind, when they have it before it changes to a different type of brain, which we'll talk about later. Self-correction and persistence. Many of our materials have a built-in control of error. It won't fit together if they don't do it according to the point of that material, or they'll have leftover pieces or not enough pieces. There's a lot of things built into the materials that allow them to self-correct and be persistent. Try it a different way. Do it this way, count it that way, and then find success on their own instead of an adult coming and grading their paper with a red pencil and saying, nope, that's not right. They're figuring it out for themselves, which we know is a much more impactful way to learn. The benefits of completing that 3 year cycle, right, is that they have independent learning happening at their own pace. They have time to develop in different areas. As Montessori teachers, we often see an explosion of materials being used from one area of the room at a time. Sometimes it's math, sometimes it's geography, sometimes it is, food work or writing. All these things is because they are following their passions. It's not that everyone is doing the same thing at the same time. It's that they're inspiring each other by their passion. That is contagious in a beautiful way. There's a sense of community that is built from being together for 3 years and seeing coming in as the young ones, seeing the older ones graduate out as they gradually get more experience and suddenly they become the leaders and they're the ones graduating out and the youngers are watching them do that. And it is magnificent to see a child go from 3 to 6 years old, literally doubling their age, their everything about them in the 3 years. It's unbelievable what happens in 3 years to a child that age. The consistency and the stability to know what to expect when you come to school, to know what the rules are of the room, where to find things, how the community functions, the relationships with their educators or with their, their partners in their classrooms. Having that consistency and stability does so much to free up their minds to take in learning because they feel safe and secure and they understand how to function in that space. The deep understanding and mastery. Child can work on something for as long as they need to or want to until they really get it. No one's forcing them ahead or holding them back. They go from being an explorer to an experimenter to an expert in all these different disciplines, all these different areas. The development of the social skills that we talked a lot about on the last slide, that's huge. Opportunity to learn from the community and then the elders and then become the elder. It's just like when we start a new job, we have to rely on the people that have been there before us or move to a new city or, start a new degree. We have to rely on the people that were there before us to usher us in. Then we become more confident, and then suddenly we're the ones ushering in the new folks. That cycle is happening in our lives as adults, ongoing for the rest of our lives. But getting the practice at this young age is super beneficial to them for the future. Developing their own leadership skills and empathy. Absolutely. Let's talk about academics for a bit. So, the progression of Montessori materials is foundational and it goes through and builds upon itself and it's multidimensional, meaning that we talk a lot about it like a spiral. We often revisit the same materials and use them in a new multidimensional way every time we come around. So many of the materials have extensions and exercises and games that we play with them. And it's not just about the first time around, it's about the second and the third and the fourth. It takes time to get the full benefits of each of these materials. And there is no ceiling to learning. So many of these materials that you see, you'll also see in a Montessori elementary school because they are absolutely appropriate for elementary age children as well. Just like we talked about, every time you revisit it, you use it in a more sophisticated way. And so there is, sometimes parents are like, what are they going to be doing for another year? More of the same. It's not. It's not. It's revisiting those materials in new and exciting ways and being introduced with more sophisticated materials that are going to take them further in all of these academic disciplines. So we said this on the last slide. Children are not held back or pushed forward because of the rest of the class. Each child is on an individual trajectory. And I really have visceral memories of being young. And if children in the class did not get, they didn't understand and they got a poor grade on something, it's like, sorry, we have to move on to the next unit. In Montessori, it's not like that. They can continue to practice as many times as needed before they understand for themselves that they have a self-mastery of that concept or that skill. It's like riding a bicycle, it's okay if you fall off. We're not going to give up on learning how to ride a bicycle. We're going to keep practicing more and more and more until you eventually get it. And it's the same with anything. It's the same with toilet independence. It's the same with all multiplication. It's the same with all of these things. Nothing is on a fixed timeline. It's for that child and that child only as they move through things. So I wanted to dive a little bit into literacy progression, math progression, and then a short dive into geography. But literacy is really the brilliance of this Montessori method with literacy. It just it's unparalleled. So starting in infant and toddler, and when they first come to the children's house, there's a rich, rich climate of spoken language. That helps a child build a large vocabulary. They have an understanding of the world around them because we've been reading books, we've been singing songs, we've been telling stories, we've been talking about language cards, we have been, having different scenarios, talking about biomes and history and geography and art and physics and botany and, zoology. Like it continues to build and grow. So then when they are, exposed to words and they start sounding them out, they understand a lot of these words and they can put that together and know what it is. It's not just decoding, but it's also then encoding and putting it back together and saying, oh, I know about dolphins. I know where they live. I know what they eat. I know how they live and where, how they jump and all the special things that dolphins do. Um, because then moving from that spoken language, and that never ends, by the way, that continues all the way through the Children's House experience for 3 years. The understanding that words are made of sounds. We start playing sound games with them. What's the first sound you hear in the word cat? What's the last sound you hear in the word cat? What's the middle sound you hear in the word k, t, ah? What are all the sounds you hear? K, ah, t, and then longer words, and then combinations, letters that go together to make one sound, like SH makes one sound of shh, right? So then they're starting to understand that words are made of sounds and that each sound has a symbol. That symbol is a letter or combination of letters. And so then the child discovers that communication doesn't have to occur verbally. This is something where they can have an idea, think of the words that make up that idea, break it into the sounds, turn those sounds into letters that make up words, and then with a pencil or a chalk or some other way of making marks, they can share an idea on paper without making a sound. This is a revolutionary concept for a child. They've seen adults writing in their life. Most of the time now they see us typing or on our phones, but writing is the first time a child is able to have an expression without opening their mouths at all. And it's a really revolutionary moment for that child. This paves the way for all future writing because at the same time, the foundation for preparing the hand to write is happening through materials in all areas of the room. For example, through practical life and sensorial. You see a child over here spritzing this plant and caring for this plant. And what's happening at the same time that she's showing love towards this living thing, understanding how living things work, knowing that all living things need water to survive. Her hand is getting strengthened by using that spray bottle. Then we have the cylinder blocks. The way that it's the easiest to hold and the way that we present it is with the pincer grip. They all have knobs on the top, and some of them are very small and delicate, and some are very large and heavy and chunky. And all of that practice of how to lift them up and put them in the right cavity, that is all helping the hand being developed for writing someday. The dropper bottles, this is a color mixing activity. So this card is printed and laminated, and it shows how many drops of each color go in that circle. So then the child uses the red, yellow, and blue colors in the dropper bottles to put that number of drops in that circle. And when they're done, they lay a paper towel down on it or a coffee filter, and the colors bleed together. And wow, they understand that red and blue makes purple, that yellow and blue makes green, that red and yellow make orange. And then this one actually has all the secondary and tertiary colors as well. So they see the difference as the ratio of colors to each other changes. But again, you'll notice they're using the dropper bottle with the pincer grip. So they have to have very, very good control of that in order not to spray out the whole thing. They need to just get one drop out. This is the pink tower, iconic Montessori material, and there's a child. Look at that concentration with his furrowed brow. He's making sure that that smallest cube is being placed right on top of that. This might seem like at surface level, it is an exercise in the visual discrimination of dimension, going from 10 cubic centimeters down to 1 cubic centimeter, but it's also preparing his hand for writing. We've got the metal insets here, which at first glance, children think of it as a design or an art activity, but it's actually really strengthening and helping with the refinement of movement with their pincer grip. And that is helping them prepare for writing. And then we have, once, they've been doing sandpaper letters, they've got a sand tray and they're starting to make those letters, and they've traced it so many times on the sandpaper letter that they go to write it with their finger in the sand. It comes easily to them because they've had so much practice. All of these things take time. This can't happen just overnight. So taking the full 3 years to fully realize this, the next thing this child's going to move on to is chalk on a chalkboard. And then the next thing will be a pencil on blank paper. And then it'll be a pencil on lined paper. And then someday it will be a pen on paper. And then it might be a pen dipped in ink on paper, right? So you go through these stages and, tracing the letter R or the sound in a sand tray, it's very non-committal. It's very low risk. If they mess it up as determined by them, they just shake it, like an Etch-a-Sketch, and it just disappears. And then they can try again. No harm, no foul. No one has to be embarrassed or worry about making a mistake. There are no mistakes. It's all practice leading up to the success of making those letters. Mathematics. This is honestly one of the areas of the room that is just so dramatic in explaining the progression of how Montessori was thinking about these materials and the progression. So at the top picture here, this is actually a sensorial material called the red rods. And it is just about the discrimination of dimension in the simple form of length, right? We had the pink tower, that was 3 dimensions. We have the brown stair, which is 2 dimensions. Now we have the red rods, just 1 dimension of length. And he's worked with that number of times. And then by the time he gets to starting math, he has the number rods here. This is the very first math material, and it mirrors in dimension precisely the red rods. But there's something different about it. Every 10 centimeters, it changes red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. And it goes from 1 all the way up to 10, which 10 centimeters times 10 we know is 1 meter. And so that is the number rods. That's the first material in the math series. And then once the child can understand quantity and they can bring you the rod of 4 and the rod of 7, and they can put them in order and they can put them together, grade them in order from a distance and all kinds of different things. Maybe they've taken them and compared them to the length of different things in the room, like the table or the seat of the chair or the shelf, or the distance from here to there. And they've really been experimenting with that and understanding quantity. We set that aside and we bring out the sandpaper numbers, and the child traces those numbers and does all kinds of activities. Put the 8 over here, trace the 4, put the 2 over here, give me 1 in my hand. All of these activities we do to help them memorize, essentially, the numbers. Then we put the 2 together. It always goes in the same sort of pattern in math. The quantity, just quantity for quantity's sake. Then the symbol, which is the number. Remember, in literacy, the symbol was the letter. In math, the symbol is the number. Then the association of the 2, where we have the number rods and cards. So the cards are numbered 1 to 10, and they get matched up with these number rods. Then we have the spindle boxes, which there is not a picture of them here, but they're basically wooden compartments, and they're divided in compartments 0 to 9. And then there's wooden spindles, and they count them out. And they're identical spindles because a unit has to be the same to be considered another unit of that, whatever that item is. So the spindles are wooden, and you can ask your children's house guides to show you these materials. They would be happy to. When I was a children's house guide, oof, I loved it when parents asked me questions about the materials because, as you can tell, I could talk about this till the end of time. I love it so much. So the spindle boxes, and then comes the cards and counters. And those numbers are jumbled up. They're not printed on the compartments like the spindle boxes. So they then have to put the numbers in the numerals in order and then count out the counters underneath. And the counters could be red circles, they could be identical marbles, they could be identical seashells. It doesn't matter. The point is that a unit and 10 of that unit means 10 of exactly the same thing. Then we're going to move on to the golden beads and the decimal cards. And I actually wanted to move on to a slide, and we might pop back to this one in a moment. But this is so brilliant. I just get so moved I just get such a frenzy of excitement when I look at these materials because, like I said, we start with the quantity, then the symbol, and then the association of the two. So this is the introductory tray to the golden beads. It has a unit. It has a bar of 10 units, a bar of 10. Then it has wired together 10 bars of 10. That's 100. It's a square of 100. Then there are 10 squares of 100 wired together to make a cube of 1000. And these are an incredible material sensorial experience because if you're holding that unit in your hand and you're holding that 1000 cube in your hand, you can feel the difference. You can also just see the difference, but you can also feel the weight of the difference. And we do lots of activities with them, like counting the 10 bar, holding it against the each line of the 100 square. So 1, 10, 2, 10s, 3, 10s, 4, 10s, 5, 10s, 6, 10s, 7, 10s, 8 10s, 9 10s, 10 10s. A square of 100 equals 10 tens. We do the same with the hundreds and counting up to 1000. 100, 200s, 300, and we're holding it against the side of that cube. So the child is really taking this concrete, they're taking this very abstract idea of quantity, and it's made into these concrete materials that they can really understand. And then later, they're going to take that concrete information and turn it into the abstract again. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But quantity, symbol, association. So then we set aside the golden beads introductory tray and we take out the decimal cards, and they have a unit, they have 10, they have 100 and 1000. We do all the exercises to help them remember. We count the zeros, we compare them to each other, and then we put them together. And then we start building numbers. So this child built 1,375. They literally brought 1,000 because we have a bank of many, many, many pieces of all of these, many thousand cubes, many hundred squares, many 10 bars, many units. And he brought 1,300s, 100, 200, 300, 7 10 bars. That equals 70. So 1 10, 2 10s, 3 10s, 4 10s, 5 10s, 6 10s, 7 10s. And then 5 units. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that child has built 1,375. Now they're cooking with gas. Now they're using big numbers. And we're going to move into the operations with those big numbers. What do I mean by the operations? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Yes, kindergartners are doing division in the thousands. Okay, so starting with addition, I would have 2 or 3 children, how many ever children, I would give them each a number in secret. And I probably jot it down for myself because I'm an old lady and I'll forget what I asked them to bring by the time they bring it back. And they will then go to what we call the bank and they'll get that many numbers. So if say I said 1,375, this is what what one child would bring, and I would give another number to another child, another number. We'd count them and verify, and then we'll put them all together on one mat and we'll count it up. And if we get to 10 of something, we change it for one of the next. So what I mean by that is if we have 10 units, we can take those 10 units back to the bank, dump them out, and bring 110 bar. So we're changing. So a child has a physical, tangible understanding of what it means to change from 10 units to 110 bar, or 10 10 bars to 100, or 10 100 squares to 1000. Then we count up what we have left and bring the cards to match, and we will see what actually is addition. When we take 3 numbers or 2 numbers or 4 numbers and we put them together to make one larger number, that is addition. And they've physically done it. They've carried those beads back and forth from the bank, and they've physically put them together. It's not just memorization, it's actually doing it and it's integrating into who they are and their understanding of the concept of mathematics. Subtraction, same thing. We start with a large amount of beads, count them up, take away some, count up what's left. That is subtraction. When you have a large number, you take away a smaller number and you have a smaller number left. Multiplication, what is it? It's just addition, isn't it? But it's the same number. So I'll tell those three children to each bring me the same number. And when they show up with the exact same number on their trays, they're always like, hey, she told me to bring that number. She told me to bring that number. And I'll say, you know what? I told you all to bring the exact same number. Let's add those together. And then we have our large number. That's our answer in multiplication. So multiplication, that's just addition, adding the same number a number of times, right? Times. Then I put division down here. So division is also, it's so fun to do it with the golden beads. So you start with your large quantity, and then you have, say, 3 mats or 3 trays like this, and you start distributing them. Every tray has to get the exact same number. Say you had 7,000 cubes here. You put 1 on each tray, then you have enough to put 1 more on each tray, and then you have 1 left. You can't give them all the same number because that is, you only have 1 and you need to have 3. So you bring that to the bank and you change it for 1,000 squares that you bring back. Then you start distributing those one at a time till everybody has the same number, and then you can't divide it anymore. Then you go change them for tens and divide those out. Then you change them for units and divide those out. And the number, the answer, is what 1 tray got. And if you have some left over, would be a number less than 10. And actually in this case, a number less than 3 because you need to divide them out. That's the remainder. So a child learns about remainders. So remember what I said about concrete. We took this abstract concept of quantity, turned it into something concrete with these beads. Now we're going to take it and abstract it again. So now they understand what 1,000 is. We're going to let 1,000 be represented by this little square for this material called the stamp game. And that is what we're going to use in place of 1,000. We don't need these big cubes anymore because now we understand that's 1,000 and 100 and 10 and a unit. And then we start doing division with, addition, subtraction, and multiplication first, and then division, where we're dividing these stamps out underneath these spindles. So this is 6,174 divided by 5. So there's 5 spindles here. And we had 6 thousands, and we put 1,000 there, 1,000 there, 1,000, each got 1,000. Then we had 1,000 left over. We put it back in the box and brought out 10 hundreds. Okay, and then keep dividing and dividing and dividing. So it's really, and this is just the start. You go on to a whole mess more of amazing math materials, but I really wanted to show you guys this part first. Geography, we're going from the whole to the parts. So we start with actually not this globe. This is a globe that we're all used to, but we have what's called the sandpaper globe, where it's smooth blue for the water, and the continents are just cut out of sandpaper. So the child understands that the world is made of water and land and water. Then we go to a globe where each continent is painted on that land part. And then we know that all the land in the world is divided into continents. Then how did we go from something spherical to something flat? We have a material where we have a blue ball of clay and we cut it in half and we press it down, and that looks a lot like the world map. And then we transfer our knowledge into something flat. Each piece is its own continent. Then we go to a continent map. This is the continent of Oceania. So it has Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, Tasmania, French Polynesia, all of those. In the United States, we would go to the North America map. So it has Canada, US, Mexico, all the little countries in Central America. Each one of them is so important. They're their own piece. Then we go to the United States map, where every state is its own. And at the same time, we're bringing these places on the map to life through cultural activities, botany and zoology, physical science activities. All of these activities helping the child understand that in all of these places that we are moving with pieces like on a puzzle, There's real people living there, and they might live the same way as us or different than us in all kinds of ways. So Dr. Montessori really recognized that this third year is when there is a change in the brain of a child. They go from needing things and wanting things one way to shifting to needing and wanting them another way. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So these benefits culminate and evolve into a new phase of development. Children move from concrete exploration to abstract understanding, demonstrating executive function, leadership, and academic mastery. So you see these children are working on the decanomial square and they're piecing these pieces together. This is an incredible thing. In the background, you can see the bead cabinet with the chains hanging down. Child at some point might make the connection that the colors of these pieces of the decanomial square are the same colors as these chains, that the red has a tiny little square, just one piece, and in the bead cabinet, it's one tiny little red bead, and so on and so forth. The largest layer here is gold because that is where we get to these children are working on the 1,000 chain. They're counting from 1 to 1,000. And so they're starting to make connections and put together patterns of how math works. And the 5 turning 6-year-old is a really magical creature. I loved having kindergartners in my children's house. And the characteristic of, say, their work style, it changes from 5 years old to 6, from going from mostly working individually, maybe in pairs, to starting working in groups, like these children here are working in a group with a color tablet box number 3. Their order, when they're 5, it's still mostly external. They still need to have everything in order around them, but it's slowly coming into internal order so that the order is coming from within themselves instead of from the environment. Their independence is going from they're kind of consolidating all their physical independence and learning and getting into an intellectual state of independence. They take in information first, as we talked about, through the absorbent mind, and then they're transferring, they're changing, progressing into the reasoning mind where they're starting to ask more questions. They're starting to have moral questions about things. The materials, they're very concrete, as we talked about, and then they start to abstract concepts from them, as we talked about with those math activities. They use their activities for the intended purpose, but then they start to generally just start experimenting a little bit more with different ways of using materials, and they learn mostly directly, but also from absorbing, watching others, and into teaching others. And we know that we learn so much by teaching others. It's not simply repetition, it's culmination. And this is why this takes time. This is why they need 3 years. The children's skills go beyond just being able to identify things or even to read. For example, a child will have had lessons on the parts of a plant, not only in theory, but in practice. They might have had a dandelion that they dissected, felt the long taproot, and understood the role of this plant in the interconnectedness of nature. They might have used all the parts for food, tea, dye, and medicine. And this takes time and access. Each year we revisit things and we might focus, children might be super excited because the dandelions are all blooming outside. So we might have a dandelion workout like this and talk about dandelions and dissect dandelions and do work with dandelions. It changes all the time. This is a particular point in brain development. So Angeline Stoll Lillard wrote the Montessori, The Science Behind the Genius. It's an amazing book. I highly recommend. All of the modern neurological research and science is supporting the things that Dr. Montessori knew 120 years ago by observing children. And in that book, she writes that children in Montessori programs who stay through kindergarten show stronger academic achievement, social understanding, and executive function than those who miss that final year and go into conventional settings. The continuity and the relationships and the environment, they help with self-regulation and long-term memory formation because, again, it's that spiral. They're revisiting concepts and taking them to more sophisticated layers. When they are in this environment for 3 full years, they get to it absorbs more. It's not one and done. Okay. It's not, we're just going to have this lesson and then we're going to move on and never talk about it again. It continues to wrap around and around and around. And the children are becoming leaders, and the children have a unique opportunity to consolidate and enrich their knowledge by helping younger peers. This is a form of teaching to learn, which is also supported by Vygotsky, who has a sociocultural theory and confirmed by research on peer learning, aside from traditional school settings, there is no other time in our lives where we're strictly divided by age, where we're only with people our exact same age. In our families, we're not. In our workplaces, we're not. On the bus, we're not. In the supermarket, we're not. In college, we're not. We're with people of all ages all the time, except in traditional schooling, where we're divided out just by our age. And that is such a disservice to the children because they can learn so much, as we all do, from people that are older or younger than us, or people that have different experiences, or more experience, or less experience. And it is a milestone moment when the child internalizes the idea that she has something to offer others, modeling, sharing, leading. For example, this child has had a lot of experience with the bells. Not only is she able to model for younger children, but she's moving on to composing songs, and they are watching her. Look at that concentration of those two younger ones. She's developing while she's giving other children something to aspire to. So, some commonly asked questions by parents are how does a child do in first grade when they've had independence in Montessori and now they're entering a more structured setting? So, this is not something to worry about because the children who stay in Montessori for 3 years have developed this self-discipline of learning to wait. They've built relationships with teachers. They trust teachers. They trust that educators are there to help them and give them tools for the world and understand the world around them. Their concentration has lengthened naturally with the work. Doing those division works takes a long time and a lot of steps and a lot of patience and a lot of concentration and devotion to what you're doing. So we talked about this before. What is special or different? Aren't they just doing more of the same? No, because there's no ceiling to learning. Advanced activities are available in all the areas. And again, it's like a spiral. They revisit and revisit and revisit and do more and deeper and higher level learning with each material. So wouldn't it be important for my child to start their next school with everyone else? That sounds like a good argument on paper, but honestly, first grade, the children are all mixed up anyway. All the different kindergarten classes get scattered and regrouped in first grade. So there's always new children. They will make friends, I promise. They're 6. They will absolutely make new friends. And they've gotten confident, they've gotten strong being the leader. They're more resistant, or excuse me, resilient and adaptable. So that friendship making and that adaptation to the school, it's not a problem for Montessori children. Um, what if they are so much more advanced than other first graders? Well, we talked about this a bit earlier. Much of the school year, of the start of the school year in kindergarten, is just helping children understand how to be in a school setting. By first grade, that is hopefully sorted out, and that in first grade, there's more flexibility, as we talked about, to group children according to academic ability. And so they're not having sort of use this time in kindergarten waiting for everybody else to catch up. They're meeting people when they're more on their level and are able to differentiate. So these are some of the commonly asked questions by parents about kindergarten in the Montessori classroom. It really cannot be overstated. The importance of this cannot be overstated. Here we have learning grammar, for goodness sakes. They're learning about the article, the adjective, this triangle right here. First of all, the names of the triangles, there are 7 different kinds. I didn't know if you knew that and if you could name them, but many of the Montessori kindergarten children can name them. This is the large red right angled isosceles triangle. The noun is triangle. All of these words in the middle are adjectives. They're all descriptor words, and the is the article. These children are doing long addition, long columns of addition, and this child is doing embroidery. So we keep going with the work of the hand. Um, I highly encourage you to visit your child's classroom. Ask your school leader or ask your children's classroom teacher, when would be a good time for me to come in? I'd love to touch these materials and talk about these materials with you. Explore the classroom from a child's perspective. Do you see how one material leads to the next and the connections between these areas? And then just in conclusion, we have 5 minutes left, but here he is again, my little Nico, as he was just about to start Children's House. He was finishing up in toddler, and now, if anyone can get this child to smile on camera, I would be so grateful. But there he is as a ski instructor at Beaver Creek in Colorado, grown-up man, child, doing his life's work. So I would love to hear from you if you have questions. What was interesting? What more would you like us to share with you? I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take these last few minutes. If anybody has questions, make sure please that you've entered the name of your child's school, where it is in the world, and then the ages of your children. Let us know how old your children are. Um, and so I'd love to hear from you. Does anybody have any questions, comments, anything you'd like to ask? Yes, Setu, please go ahead and unmute.
Hi, my name is Satu. Thank you for saying my name exactly correctly.
Wow, thank you. I'm glad.
So one question I had, you had mentioned about the child being in a summer birthday.
Mhm,
So I have a 3-year-old whose birthday is in August 23rd, and then the cutoff is August 30th in Florida.
mhm,
So in my mind, I have a November child who's the older one. And
mhm.
so he's been in the Montessori class setting since 1.5, and now he's about to go into first grade at the upcoming academic year. So I have seen huge change in that 5 to 6 years old. So thank you so much for sharing that. But in my mind, I've been always confused that what's a good time, just because this child is born on in August, right before the cutoff, like, does that mean this child is ready to go on? And I'm as a mom, like, I don't want to hold my child back, but at the same time, it's like, is she going to be completely ready to go on to first grade? Because I have seen the additional time has benefited my older child so much.
Oh, this is exactly a perfect example. I love your observations about how that extra time, because your older child is a November birthday, right? So, they would end up being a little older than maybe some other children when they get to the next grade level up. And they will have had that extra time to mature, to grow in all these different areas, academically and social emotionally. I would just because a child is, according to the school districts, ready on paper by their birth date, I would absolutely encourage you to give their child what you were able to give to your older child, which is that extra year of time, because what happens in that third year is going to benefit them and set them up for success for everything going forward. And like I said, there's no ceiling to the learning. So if the child is highly advanced in math, but maybe needs more time in social emotional or geography or reading, every single child is different. And that is what is magical about this environment, is that we customize to each child. And that is not a, marketing ploy. Like that is the method. Dr. Montessori really recognized that children are so individual and they have individual passions and inspirations and skills and talents, and being able to give them time to nurture all of them so that when they do go to first grade, they're kind of leveled out. And I would highly encourage a summer birthday to allow your child to stay in Montessori. And then you have a choice when coming the next year. They could do kindergarten again in public kindergarten. I wouldn't necessarily think they would need to, but if anyone was concerned about them starting, later than their peers or anything like that, you have options. But I'm telling you, in 26 years, I've never, ever, ever had a family regret giving their child more time. Only the opposite. And not to say that every child that moves forward is going to, struggle or anything. I'm just saying that it's never worked the opposite way where a family has regretted giving them more time. And what they're able to gain from being the leaders and really having a good handle on the way the room works. And they'll often get more and special sort of like opportunities because they're more capable. And again, that has nothing to do with age, it has to do with experience. And we know that children become more capable the more experience they have. And so we're able to meet that capability with more and special opportunities for them. And that is a very, very, very challenging thing to do in a conventional setting where you have 20, 30, or some schools almost 40 children in a class. Um, does that help with your question?
Yes, yes, thank you so much. And if I may just ask one more question. Um,
Absolutely.
so I hear peers of my older child, the 6-year-old, their peers who are like 5 and 6 years old, doing Kuman and other academic extra things.
Mhm.
Um, I've never been like pro, not that I want my child to like be totally unprepared, but at the same time, I under 6, I just feel they need to learn more than like love for learning than focus on academics. So what are your thoughts on that? When is a good time to start all of those extra academic things?
Well, certainly not before 6 years old. I think that we in the Montessori community, our classroom and our method is designed to give children who need extra practice and extra attention in any given area. We're built to do that already. So there's no need for any of that. We have conversations with your classroom guide and talk about, I wonder where you feel that they are by this age with reading or writing or geography or any kind of thing. And that's what we also remember, we'll know your child for 2, 3 years already, so we can see where they need help or more independence in different areas. That's the beauty of the relationship that's built. I remember when I worked in upper elementary in Montessori, and the teacher and I thought, oh my goodness, the school teachers that only have the children for 9 months, you just scratch the surface barely of who that child is. When you can have them for 3 full years, you really get to know that child. You get to know the family. You have a deep, deep connection with that child, and you know what that child needs, what makes them tick, what excites them, and what opportunities you can give them that are really going to skyrocket their growth and development in any given area. So I don't believe that any of those extra things are necessary from 0 to 6, certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? We are at 7:30, but I'd be happy to stay on. Please check with your schools when if you want to talk more about this with your classroom guides or with your school leaders. We really, really encourage you to give this a lot of thought because I've seen it firsthand. I was in the Children's House for many, many, many years as a guide, and the children that graduate all the way, instead of going, missing that opportunity and suddenly becoming sort of the babies of the next school, they had the opportunity to really shine as leaders. And it set them up for massive success going forward after that. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.